Look at this row of dimples in this blade. These didn't exist in any great numbers until even a century ago. Look at this knife, which happens to be on my favourite knife. This is a Santoku knife. And even though it has this beautiful classic design, these only became more popular in post-war Japan and only really started taking off in the 1980s, and now we see them everywhere. In this video, I want to share with you what I've learned about the fusion of these two elements of knife design, which actually originated on opposite sides of the globe. And also I want to share with you why I think you should think about acquiring one for your kitchen. So people have been making knives for thousands of years and out of all sorts of materials. And as we know, it's perfectly possible to make an excellent knife out of the tooth of shai hulud, for example, or even obsidian or dragon glass, which is particularly useful if you happen to be about to battle white walkers. But for the most part, over the last few centuries at least, most knives have been made out of metal, and the understanding of how to extract metal from rocks, how to smelt them, and how to fashion them into both beautiful and useful objects has been one of the great technological advances of humankind. And nowhere is this craftsmanship more true than with the knife and sword makers of Japan. And over the years, at least 3 major forms of knife evolved for specific tasks. There was the nakiri knife, which is traditionally used for preparing vegetables. It's a type of cleaver. Then there's the gyota knife, which is used for preparing meat. And then there's the deba knife, which is used traditionally for preparing fish. But this knife specialization led to a problem. So what if you're someone who either doesn't want or can't afford the full set of knives? What do? Is there a general knife solution out there for you? So the Santoku knife evolved as a solution to this problem. So if we take my Santoku and draw around the edge, I think this illustrates it nicely. So you'll see it has quite a shallow, almost horizontal lower edge, more like a cleaver, a nakiri type knife. But unlike the nakiri, the end of the knife doesn't go up, so just recall that's the nakiri knife. And instead, it comes to the upper edge comes to a point. So flat bottom and a point here, and the angle is typically about 60 degrees. So just to compare that to something like a deba or a gyota knife, it has a much more steeply angled curve and coming to a point on the upper surface. So this knife design is incredibly versatile, and this is actually reflected in the name. So if we have a look at the name, so the word Santoku is made up of 2 characters in kanji. The first is with these 3 horizontal lines in san, and it means 3. And similarly, ichi is 1 horizontal line and means 1. And ni is 2 horizontal lines and it means 2. So the second character is slightly more involved, and so this character is toku, Santoku, and toku means virtues. So Santoku means 3 virtues. So what are these 3 virtues? So this hybrid design of the knife with its shallow or near horizontal curve at the bottom and then coming to a point at the end allows you to perform all sorts of tasks, which include chopping, dicing, and mincing. Or alternatively, depending on what you read, you can handle meat, fish,
and vegetables. So there we are, 3 virtues, an all-round excellent knife.
So that's all very well about the overall design of the knife. But
what about these dimples? What about this row of dimples, this elegant row of dimples along the edge of the blade? So for their invention, we need to travel to the other side of the world. So we're going to travel from Japan to England, to a city in northern England called Sheffield. Now, today, Sheffield is famous for at least 2 football clubs, and one of them is Sheffield United, and on the logo you can see these 2 blades, and in fact Sheffield United are known as the Blades. And this references their historical importance in knife manufacture and cutlery manufacture.
That brings us to William Grant, who's a Victorian gentleman, a knife maker in Sheffield, born in 1870, and he developed a solution to the following problem.
So what I want you to imagine is a cross-section through a standard knife. So, for example, a European chef's knife, which has 2 completely flat surfaces on either side of the blade, and it passes through the food in this direction. Now, when an item of food is being cut, that process actually generates a new flat surface on the food, which is in direct contact with the flat surface of the blade. And this, of course, generates friction between the 2 surfaces. And so not only that, but because they're 2 very flat surfaces, you generate a vacuum, which I'm sure many of you will have experienced with things like, chopping potatoes sticking to the knife. Again, reducing the efficiency of the process. So William Grant's solution was to grind out these divots near the edge of the blade, this series of divots. And now instead of 2 flat surfaces, you have a disrupted surface. And the point here is that there's now an air pocket or a series of air pockets on the blade as it passes through the food. So the food passes up the side, and then not only now do you have less surface area in contact with the food, but you've disrupted any vacuum that might have formed by introducing these air pockets. So you break the vacuum. And so now it goes straight through and with much more efficiency. So in summary then, his invention, well, let's think about the classic knife. You have shear forces and lots of friction between the newly cut surface of the food and the surface of the blade. But by introducing a series of air pockets, you break the vacuum, and so this itself reduces friction, and also there's just simply less surface area in contact between the cut face of the food and the side of the blade. And this also leads to less friction. And both of these factors lead to a more pleasant culinary experience and a more efficient process.
So he patented this idea in 1928, that being this series of depressions that are ground out near the edge of the blade. And so this is now called the Granton edge. So the Granton edge was taken up across the board, both for functionality and aesthetic appeal, and no more so than in Santoku knives. So this is my Santoku knife with its Granton edge. I mean, I must agree, these are really versatile knives, and this is my go-to knife, really. I use it for everything. So it feels very comfortable in the hand. It's got a really nice grip, and a couple of things about the handle itself. So they're traditionally made of wood, and so the metal part of a knife that extends into the handle is called the tang, and I just think that's a lovely word. So this knife, it has these 2 elements developed on opposite sides of the globe, and are brought together in what I think is a very elegant fusion of design. So what I haven't talked about, I've talked about the design, but I haven't talked about the knife composition. So Santoku knives are traditionally made out of a hardened steel, which means they keep their edge for longer, but they do need sharpening eventually. And if you want to learn how I sharpen my knives with a traditional whetstone, then do have a look at this video here. Bye bye!